got a question today from a guy who is wanting to be more creative with his jiu-jitsu game. So he says that he's a blue or purple belt. I don't have the question on me right now. I apologize for that. But he is doing well. Things are going really well. He's hitting lots of techniques. But the issue, I guess, that he has is that he wants to be more creative with his game. He wants to kind of veer off and get his own style. But he finds that he's only able to use the techniques that he's been shown, and he has trouble sort of playing outside of the box. And so his question to me is, how do you become more creative with your jiu-jitsu, / when does your game begin to blossom? When do you get to create your own style of jiu-jitsu? So, brother, thank you for the question. And I'll share it like this. I'm not the most creative person, but I've definitely been creative with jiu-jitsu, and I've been able to create my own style. But it's maybe not in the process that you might think. So jiu-jitsu techniques, I'll say it like this, are kind of like a disease. I'll use this analogy. Now, I'll get into why I call it that. But an example of that is this weekend. My buddy Drew, he's a brown belt. He came into town and he trained with me for a couple days. And while he was here on Saturday, we're having a good roll. Everything's going good. And then he throws me with a beautiful throw. Throws me in front of all my students. I don't know the name of the throw, but it's the last name is Gaeshi. And it's where basically you go right up under the shoulder, sends me flying. It was a beautiful throw. Now, when I hit the ground, I'm not mad. I'm more like, oh man, you hit me with that beautiful throw. And he had learned this throw while he was training in South Florida with Cyborg. And Cyborg's really popular for the throw. Now, after we were done rolling, I got up, I was like, dude, you got to show me the throw. So he shows me how to do it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, got the hang of it. And then today, on Monday, me and my guys practiced it. So this is what I mean by it's a disease. It's infectious, right? He was infected with the technique from Cyborg. He then infected me with it because I was like, that's so cool. And then I infected my students with it, and then it'll continue to go. Now, like infectious diseases, what happens when you begin to have a cure for them? They begin to adapt, right? They begin to change. This is why staph infections are so gnarly, because we give one antibiotic and then it adapts to that antibiotic, and then we have to have another one. And this is the way that it happens sometimes with your techniques, because you take that technique that you have from your coach, from a friend, from some bearded guy on YouTube, and you take that technique and you put it into rolling. You use it with your training partners, right? Or tournaments or whatever it might be. And then they come up with the cure. They stop your technique. They find a way to defend against it. And then what do you have to do? You don't necessarily want to give up on the position altogether. So you think like, well, they stopped my half guard sweep. Well, maybe there's an adjustment that I could make. And then you begin to go down this loop where you then have to be creative to make something new happen. And so this is kind of the normal, let's say, I would say, cycle of techniques. So when you learn these techniques from your coaches and stuff like that, use them as is. Just use them as they show them. Become very proficient with that, because there's something there. That's why they're showing them to you. Now, when they stop working or when you start running into difficulties, that's when you go off in your own path with those techniques, and you have to be creative with it. Now, the one thing is that you'll have to do is you'll have to be okay with messing things up, because in the process of creating these new variations, there's going to be a lot of things that aren't going to work. But then you keep doing it, and over time, you'll find new stuff. This is how my half guard game happened. Years ago, I learned a bunch of half guard stuff from different people, and I really liked the position. It seemed like it fit for me. And then I kept using it, and initially, I used it the way that they showed. But I found that there were problems that I was having, and so then I began to adapt things and try new grips. There was definitely a lot of getting smashed in the process, but over time, I developed my own half guard style. And so it'll happen with this way, I think, for a lot of people. Now, there are people, like I said, that just kind of cook things up, like, let me try this, right? That happens sometimes. But a lot of times, the variation and the creativity happens on a much more, like, utilitarian sort of way, where you're just forced in this position and you've got to find a way to deal with it. So I would say don't worry about not being creative. Give your time, or give your game time to blossom. You're still fairly new in jiu-jitsu. So give it time, and like I said, just be mindful that as you're going into these positions, as people stop your techniques, that's where the creativity is going to come out. So yeah, brother, thank you. Sorry, first off, sorry for missing your question in your name, or missing your name on the question, but thank you so much for asking. And guys, I'll talk to you next time.